Okay, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to now turn this elongated cube into a book. So if I press the letter N, I get all of these options pop up here, and we can see that I've played around with this cube a little bit. Instead of having a scale of 1, 1, 1 and dimensions of 2, 2, 2, which is what your cube probably is by default when you make a new file, mine's all a bit messed up. So I can just put all those back to 1, and now it's put my dimensions back to 2 as well. And then I'm pretty close to where Blender is when we create a new file. Okay, so these numbers here, we're going to come back to scale in a moment, but let's look at the dimensions. So the dimensions, 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. So that's too big for a book. So I'm going to make this the dimensions of what a book is. And I'm going to say that a book is about 0.3 or 30 centimeters by 0.2 or like 20 centimeters by 0.03, like 3 centimeters. And if I zoom in, and I'm going to use Shift and pan my mouse, it's a little bit hard for me to focus on the book because now it's so small. If you're having that problem, which you probably are, what you can do is you can go View, Frame Selected. Or if you've got a numerical keypad which has that block of numbers on the right-hand side, you can press numpad dot. And if I do that, it's going to refocus my camera on that smaller object. And now I can zoom in nice and easily. And if I go into my solid view by pressing Z and just toggling to solid, we can see we've got the book there. With these view menus, we can also toggle up here. It's much like going into edit mode and toggling between 1, 2, 3 or vertex, edge and face. These are just the different view modes, and I'll explain more of them as we go along. But if we look in solid mode, okay, so now we've got something about the size of the book. What I want to do is I want to change this part of the object so that we've got the spine of the book, which is the thick cardboard cover, and then the pages, which are usually set inside a little bit. So I'm going to go into edit mode by pressing Tab. And there's so many different ways you can make a 3D model of a simple object. So there's so many ways you could make a book. So the way I'm going to show you now, it's just one way, but there's lots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tool here, Loop Cut. If you're not seeing this menu here, the letter T will hide and reveal the tools here on the left. So we're going to use Loop Cut. And first of all, I'll make some cuts for the difference between the spine and the pages. So if I left click here, it's cut a new set of loops all the way around. And we should also, before we do anything else, we should have some options here. If you don't see the options here, you might have clicked somewhere else. You can always just go back, press undo until your loop cut's gone. And now if I do a loop cut, this little options menu temporarily appears. So I'm going to stay, instead of 1 loop cut, I want 2. And I can also press S and Z, and I can increase or decrease the distance. And I'm sort of looking at the height that the pages are going to be. So something like that for now. We can make that a little bit more precise later, but I'm just going to do it visually for a start. Okay, so that's good. Now I want another cut like that here, because that's going to be like the spine of the book. So I'll click there, and now I'm going to press G, Y, and I'll move it across just on the y-axis. Okay, I've still got my snapping turned on. I'll turn that off. Okay, so that's not too bad. We can sort of, if I click out of my edge loop, we can imagine that like the pages will be in here, and then this is going to be the book spine that's going to stand out a little bit. What I want to do now is I want all of these to be like the same distance. And there's a few different ways we can do that. I'll show you one way to do it. If I go out of edit mode by pressing Tab, I'm going to make another cube, and I'm going to use that kind of like a ruler, like as a measuring object. So if I go Shift A and I make a cube, and make sure you're not in edit mode. So you're out of edit mode, in object mode. You can even deselect your object and press Shift A and add mesh, add a cube. Okay, it'll come in really big, like the default is 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. And I want to make this, I don't know, like 3 millimeters. I'm going to make it a really small cube. So I'm going to make all of these 0.0 0.03 and hit enter. So now we should have a tiny little cube that's probably in the middle of our book here. And then I'm going to go into my X orthographic view, press G for grab, and I'm just going to use this as a measuring tool. Okay, so I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and this, actually maybe I want it a bit bigger, maybe 4 millimeters. Maybe the spine, actually I'm going to leave that distance for the spine. Maybe the spine can be a bit longer, and I'll use this just to make the height here the same. In fact, it already is, but hey, let's just show you how to do something exact. Let's say we want this to be exactly 4 millimeters. Okay, I can make that 0.0004. Whoops, sorry, that's too small. Should be 0.004. I can left click and drag 0.004, enter. Okay, so now I'm going to put this in here, and I want it to be exactly on that edge. So if I turn on my snapping, and I can say snap to edge, then I can press G and Z, and it'll just move it on its height. And then if I select my book and I go into edit mode by pressing tab, edge select mode, either by pressing 2 or changing it up here, and I'm just going to drag select, and that should, because we're in wireframe mode, it should get all of those edges around there. Go back into my orthographic view, then I'm going to zoom in and press G, Z, and what I've done is I've just moved all of those up to perfectly snap to the base of that cube. So you can see I'm sort of just using the cube as a little ruler. And that's really handy when it comes to precision modeling. You know, when you're modeling something to 3D print, you can't just guess the height. You need to know exactly, either by millimeter or by 1/10 of a millimeter and so on. So this is a good skill to have. So I'll move my cube down here and do the same thing. I'll GZ, and that will just, it will snap to wherever I've got my mouse, and I want to snap it to this edge here. Left click to activate that. Now I'm going to click on my book, shift and middle mouse to sort of pan my view to where I want it. Tab for edit mode, left click, drag select. So now I've got all of these edges. Go back into my orthographic view, and now I'm just going to press GZ and snap all of those edges down to the cube. GZ and left click. Okay, nice. We can actually delete this tiny cube now. We don't need it. X and delete. Okay, so now if I go back into my solid view, go into edit mode, now I've got the book, and these two bits are exactly 4 millimeters thick. Okay, so now let's make the, we're going to make the spine be a little bit wider than the pages. So I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to select these faces here that I want to come out wider, and I'll turn off my snapping because that might make things go a little strange. I can press E for extrude and X to go on the X-axis, and I can make a new set of faces like that. And if I type in a number like 0.004 and hit enter, it's extruded it exactly 4 millimeters. So that's also good. So in this case, we don't need to use a ruler object. We can actually just extrude it exactly the way we like it. Okay, so let's do the same on the other side. I'm going to select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces, and I'm going to press E. Now I'm just tapping E. I'm not holding it. I'm going to tap E, tap X, so I'm going this way. But now, if you look at my axis here, I'm going in the negative X. I'm not going positive this way. I'm going negative. So I'm going to press negative minus 0.004 and hit enter. And now we've extruded that 4 millimeters in the negative direction of X. And now I'm just going to do the same for these faces here. Holding down Shift to select multiple faces. And that's good. I don't have any extra faces. That's great. Now I'm going to press E, tap Y, and I'm extruding on the Y. And we can see here we are going in the direction of positive Y. So I'm just going to type 0.004, and now we've gone the same amount. And if I click off and I look, okay, now we're already starting to look like a book. You know, there's the spine, here are the pages. That's pretty good. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to add a few more details just to make it look slightly less, you know, rectangular. So I'm going to do some loop cuts here. I'm going to click this, and I might make that's probably enough. I'm not going to make this really detailed, just sort of something that'll look okay in the background, because this is, it's the first object you've 3D modeled. So the purpose here is really just to show you the very basic ideas of edges, faces, and vertexes, extruding, loop cuts, and so on. So this is sort of pretty simple stuff. I'm going to select just these 3 edges in the middle of the book spine. And now if I pressed GY, it's going to look a little bit sharp. And what I want to actually do is I want to have a curve coming out here, like the curve of the back of a book. And the back of the book is usually curved because as you open the book, it kind of bends all of the spine. So we're going to use a tool here called proportional editing. So I'm going to click that. Now if I press GY, at the moment everything's moving, which is not what we want. But if I use my middle mouse and I make it smaller and smaller, eventually you'll see this little circle. And this circle is telling us the influence area of our proportional edit. So if I make this circle really small, it'll be sharp like that. But as I make the circle bigger, it sort of bends everything and it makes everything move just a little bit, which is exactly what we want. It's almost like we're sculpting in a really simple way. And I'm just going to put a tiny curve. That doesn't look very good. I'm going to just undo that. I'm going to do it again from this side so I can see what I'm doing. GY, and just a bit. I don't know, however like the back of a book should look. That looks better to me. Okay, what else can we do? One thing you'll notice is that all of these edges look really, really sharp. So we might bevel them. Before we do any beveling, I want you to look at these scale numbers because I mentioned that a little bit earlier. So the dimensions, that just tells us the size of the book. But the scale, if I just click drag and put all of these to 1, we can see that we've got this huge thing again. And if you look at the dimensions, it's very close to that original cube. And that's because scale, it's sort of like how Blender remembers the original size of the object. So we can change an object, but Blender will sort of remember that it used to be a different size. If I hit undo, Command Z, and we go back to our original size, what I can do is I can go Object, Apply, Scale, and you'll see that the book looks the same, the dimensions are the same, but now the scale is all set at 1. And that's good for many reasons. There are things later that Blender calculates relative to the scale. One of them is beveling, which we're going to do in a moment to smooth some of these edges. But it also comes into physics simulations, 3D printing, all sorts of things. There are reasons that we have the scale and the dimensions separate because at some points having them separate means we can do all sorts of interesting things. Okay, so I'm going to go back into edit mode, and first of all, I'm going to add a few more loop cuts around the corners of my book. So I'm going to do one here. And I'm just going to GY, oops, I've got my proportional editing still on. I'll turn that off. I'll press GY, and I just want to bring that, oh, okay, I don't want to go past that. What am I doing? Okay, yes, GY, that's right. I don't want to go past here because then we've got a weird situation where a face is kind of overlapping another face. And that, it's sort of like you're turning your object inside out a little bit. So we don't want to do that, but I just want to have it sort of close to the edge of my pages, but not overlapping another edge. That's cool. And I'm going to do the same here. So I'm going to click here and just go GX, something like that. And that's because we're going to add a little bevel here, but I still want to keep all of my edge loops. See how my edge loop tool, it can still go all the way around my object in lots of places. That's still kind of useful. So I've just made these little kind of holding edges, and then I'm going to just go back into my selection, and I just want to grab 1, 2, 3, 4 edges here. Same on this side. Oh, I need to add one more of those loop cuts. I can do this and GX it over here. I am kind of eyeballing this at this point. GX, something like that. If you wanted the book to be exactly symmetrical, another thing we could do is I could just cut it here. I could actually, I'll show you this. You don't have to follow along here, but I'm just going to show you for interest. If I go here, I could actually delete half of my book. And if I wanted this side to be the same as the other side, well, I can just mirror it back over. So if I go into my modifiers, and I'll show you mirror, and I mirror it on the x-axis, and then I hit apply, it should look exactly the same. And I'll just check if I grab in the middle. I just want to see it's all joined together. It is. Okay, so you can do that if you like. You can rewind that section of the video. You should end up with basically the exact same thing. Instead of me guessing that distance, I actually took this side of the book and just mirrored it over. Okay, so here's our book. Now I was going to just bevel these edges a little bit. So I'll go into edge selection mode, either by pressing 2 or by switching it up here. And I want this one, shift select, left click to grab all 4, and then shift middle mouse button to just reposition my viewport, and shift and get all of these. So I should have, if I go into my wireframe mode by pressing Z, I've got some edges here and edges here selected, and that's good, nothing else. Now I'm going to go into bevel. If I click bevel here, and I just click this little handle and pull it, you'll see I get a little group of extra faces. And when I release it, I'll get some options here. So I can play with this number. I might make it 0.65, and I might add another section. I could even make it a bit bigger. Like, what if I turn that 6.5 into a 7? Do I have enough space for that? I do. Okay, that's cool. So now if I go back into my solid mode by pressing Z, you can see that, and if I press tab to go back into object mode, I've got a little bit of roundness there. And that's quite important because 3D objects, this sharpness is often what makes them look kind of like unrealistic, is really, really sharp edges. So here we definitely want a little bit of softness because it's a page, so the pages are never really sharp. And we can also add some bevels later if we want sort of around the whole thing. But I'm just going to keep this as it is now because what I want to do is add our texture. Okay, so this is the sort of, I guess, the last part of making the book is how do we make it go from this gray 3D object to something that has a texture? Good question. So I'm going to go across into the shading tab here, and I'll zoom in to see my book, and well, I can also go view frame selected, and you can see that it looks the viewport looks a little bit different. That's because by default the shading tab is in the render preview or material preview mode. If I press Z and go back into solid, I'll show you why the material preview is the default here. This thing here, this whole section here, this is, if I click on this little editor type, it's the shader editor. Okay, so what's a shader? A shader is something that takes like the geometry, which in this case is just the gray, set of vertex edges and faces, and allows them to render in different colors and different surfaces, and allows us to make it look like something. So by default, it's got a material on it, which at the moment is just white. If I click here, I can rename it. I'm going to call it book, hit enter. And also, I should probably call this object book. At the moment, it's called cube. So if I double click there and type book and hit enter, now the object is called book, which I think is a good idea. Because as we add more things in this project, if every object is just called cube number 1, cube number 2, cube number 3, it's going to get confusing. I'm going to hit save, just for, like we do to keep our progress. So if I click here in the base color and I change it to, I don't know, blue, at the moment nothing's happened. And that goes back to our question of how we're rendering. So if I go wireframe, we just see the wires. Solid, we just see the geometry. Material preview, now we can see that color. Rendered, we'll talk about that later. That is when it's actually using the lighting we have in the scene. Material preview, it's using this sort of fuzzy background environment, which is quite convenient when we're just looking at the textures. Okay, so blue book, yeah, that's okay. Show you some other stuff. We can, if we go metallic and turn that up to 1 and turn the roughness down, we're going to get like a shiny metal book. That could be cool. But we don't want that. We want it to look like an actual book. So I'll turn the metallic back down, the roughness back up to whatever it was, somewhere around there. So we need to have a texture for a book here. So what you can do is, if you go to the internet and you can Google something like book cover texture, you're going to find all sorts of things. For some reason, most of the textures online are like old-fashioned books. I don't know why. I guess that's what people are making in 3D. But I actually wanted like a modern book. And the reason for that is that I had this reference photo of a shelf, which is actually a shelf in my sister's house. And I thought, you know, let me show you. I have this reference photo here. And a reference photo is great because it gives us like something real to move from, and reality has all sorts of like unexpected things. You know, it's got photos, it's got pens, it's got pictures and frames, and it's that sort of accidental normalness that to me makes something look real. And it's very hard to do that in 3D. So, you know, because 3D often we're just thinking about shapes. So having a photo, I really recommend a photo in your house or something like that, because it gives you little ideas that you can work from. Okay, so what I've done, I had a look online, and if I look in my textures folder, which when you download a texture, I want you to make a new folder called textures, make one called books, and I downloaded these two. This one looks like it's a fake book cover, and this one is, I guess, another fake book cover. And this one, you know, it's got some more bendy bits there. So we can use both. We can start with one and I'll always switch to the other one. Okay, so what I can do is if I go back into Blender, I can drag this one. I can just bring it right here. And it's going to come in as this node here, which is an image texture. The other way to do it is if I go Shift A and I search and I can press image, it'll come up with a blank image texture, and I just have to go, open and navigate to where that texture is. Okay, I can press X and delete that. So here's my book texture, and if I drag that on to the base color, it's come on, but it doesn't look very good. You know, it's all in weird places. Like the cover is obviously not in the right place, and all the pages look completely wrong. So what that is that's UV mapping. So basically, because we've done a little bit of 3D modeling, Blender doesn't know anymore how it should, or more specifically, where it should put the texture on all of these new faces we've made. So we have to sort of UV unwrap or UV map and just tell Blender how to put the texture onto this book. If I go into this tab here, UV editing, and I zoom in on my book, it's got my texture here, it's popped up. If you can't see it, you can just have a look in here. Because we loaded it in the shader, in the shading editor, Blender should know it's there. You can click it there. And if I press A, we can see that this is where Blender thinks my cube is. And if I go into Material Preview and I grab these and I move them around, you'll see that the texture it's changing how Blender puts the texture onto the book. So we just need to fix this up a bit. So the way to do that is, first of all, I can press with all the faces selected. So I'm in Face Select. If you press A, it'll select all in whatever mode you're in, vertex, edge, or face. So I've got all of my faces selected. Then I'm going to press the letter U for unwrap. And now it's given us all of these different options on how it should look at the cube in order to remap its UVs. UVs here, U and V just is like a 2-coordinate system, like X and Y, and it just refers to the texture space of an object because we're already using the letters X and Y here. So we use U and V for the texture space. That's kind of all you need to understand why they're called UVs. So I'm going to press U to unwrap, and I'm going to press Cube Projection because our object is pretty close to a cube. So immediately it looks a bit better, but it's not quite right. The spine is facing the wrong way. The cover is facing the wrong way. So basically we know that this whole thing's facing the wrong way. So with all of these selected here, I can press R for rotate, and I could rotate it manually, or I could just press 90 with R still selected and hit enter. So that's already a bit better. We're still a little bit mismatched. And now here, you know, the texture that we have, it's not perfectly made for a book that's 20 by 30 centimeters. It's just something I grabbed off the internet. So if you're making something really specific, you can even take a photograph of a book cover and then, you know, Photoshop it till it's square. You could scan a book. You could do all sorts of things. So you can grab a texture from anything you like and you can get really creative with it. I'm just going to quickly resize our UV map to fit this object. I'm just going to scale it on the Z axis or on the Y axis, SY, and I'm going to get it and press G and just going to sort of line it up so the spine is the right height. Now I've probably got a whole bunch of different UVs overlapping because I've got kind of the spine in the right place here, but I've got a bunch of stuff where it shouldn't be. So I want to go into there's different selection modes for UVs. Island is what we want. And if I click on island, there's a whole bunch of actually different shapes here. And I'm just going to quickly separate them out so you actually see what's going on. So island, select here. I'm going to actually separate all of these out and we'll see, you should be able to kind of start to understand what all of these are. And I've just realized a mistake I've made in my texture, which we're going to fix. See if you can guess what the mistake is before I tell you, because there's something missing. Okay, so let's just get all of these islands out and we should be able to work out what they all are. Here we've got something here and here we've got something here. Okay, so some of them should be pretty obvious. Like if I grab this one and move it around, it's clearly the spine of the book. So that's an easy one. I'm just going to G for grab and I'm going to put that back on the spine of the book. And I'm going to size it SX and just stretch it out so we're getting, you know, the spine nicely. And now if I go out of edit mode, yeah, that's not too bad. It's a little stretched because our book is a slightly different shape to their book, but it's not too bad. Go back into edit mode. Let's look at if you can't see any of your UV islands here, you just need to press A and select all the faces and they should come back up. So let's see, which island is this? If I press G for grab, okay, I can't see it on the top of my object. What if I look on the bottom? Okay, great, it's the bottom of the book. So let's pop it over here and I'm going to scale it down a bit and I'm going to scale it on the x-axis, SX, something like that. Okay, now I could go to a little bit more detail. See that little bit of a shadow there? That could be useful if we could like line it up with our geometry. And it also looks like I've got the shadow on the outside. I wanted that shadow to be like here where the book gets creased. Oh, actually, I've just realized I've forgotten something in our model. I wanted to put a little crease here where the book gets opened. Let's see if I can quickly do that. Sorry, don't hate me. I just wanted to make a little change. I'm going to make one more edge cut, edge loop. So I'm in edit mode. I've made an edge loop. I'm going to press GY, bring that over. Something like that. And then I'm going to make just a couple of loop cuts here. And I'm going to just do something like SZ and just pinch it just a tiny bit. Because that's kind of what happens when you open a book, right? It always gets that little crease there because of opening the book, and it just makes it look so much more realistic. Now that's kind of screwed up our UV mapping because I just probably stretched my UV, so I'm just really quickly going to repeat that process because we've barely started it, so it's okay. I'm going to select all my UVs, unwrap, cube projection. Okay, select them all here, rotate 90, move them out, and I'll just quickly go back into my islands and put them where they belong. I'll go out of my edge loop tool. Okay, that one's probably somewhere else. There's my spine. SY, get it kind of in the right place. SY, a little bit smaller. Which one's that? That's the front of the book. Okay, so I'm gonna SX, scale it down. G for grab, SY, make it shorter, G for grab, SY, make it a bit, oops. Oh, okay. If you press scale, you'll see you get this little white arrow with the dots. If your mouse is right near the middle, it makes it kind of hard because you're right near the center. To get a bit more control, just move your mouse further from the center of the object. Now if I press SY, I've got this big handle and it just gives me a little bit more control. Okay, G for grab. And I might just SX and just squish that in a little bit. And one of the challenges will be, can we get the crease of our book in sort of, there's probably a little dark bit there that we can use. So I might come back and fix that up. Oops, I've got to go into edit mode. If you don't see your UVs, check you're in edit mode, press A, make sure everything's selected. Okay, so this is probably the back of our book. G for grab, S, Y, SY, just get it correct, SX. Now remember, we're just tapping these buttons, we don't hold them. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I think that little crease we put is actually there where all those lines are. So that means that this thing is rotated. So I need to tap R to rotate it, and I actually need to rotate it 180 degrees. So I can just type 180, hit enter. And now if I look where those three lines are, I might actually just, can I do that and get my shadow? And then I might do a little bit of a cheat. I'm going to, in vertex mode, I'm just going to grab, whoopsie. Okay, let's go back to this island. Let's just see, how does it look, what I've done there? I feel like I've done something a little dodgy on the back of the book. Yeah, we've got a little bit of that, the shadow's good, but we've got a little bit of that spine where we shouldn't have it. So I'll just press A to get all my UVs. I might just quickly move this one out of the way, and this one, I'm just temporarily going to GX, get them out of the way, and I'm just going to do a little cheat where I'll go into vertex selection, and I'll just grab those three, and I'm going to press GX and just squidge them back over. And you can see we're losing that little bit of, if you look at my viewport over to the right, over here, I'm just trying to get rid of that little bit of texture there. So GX, and I'm just going to squidge it like that. It's a little bit of a fudge, but it's okay. And I'll do the same with this one. So I'll go back into my island selection mode, grab the whole thing, G, tap G, get that roughly lined up. And then I want to get some shadow in my texture from those three lines. So where on my texture? Yeah, it'll be that crease. I want that crease there. So Control Z to get it back. And then I'm going to go into vertex selection. I'll grab the outside edge and just GZ, bring it over a little bit closer. And then it's these ones, that's our crease. GX, and I want to put it just on that dark area. So that, it looks okay. It looks all right, huh? So like the geometry and the texture are sort of working in collaboration with each other to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so now let me just get the spine of the book in place. GX, bring that back in, put that in the right spot. Now if I press tab, it's not too bad. Now I wonder if you've seen my mistake yet. The mistake is I don't have any pages. There's no pages for the book. I've only got a book cover. So we can fix this by a few ways we can fix it. One way is if I was in Google Chrome, I could also say like book page texture. See what we get? Yeah, we want something like that, right? These would be our book pages. So what I could do is either in Photoshop, I could just add in the book pages and put them there, or I could add a second material and add the book pages to here. I'll just show you an idea of like what a texture map usually looks like. A texture map usually will have kind of a few different, let me just do this. It might have a few different surfaces in one image file. And it's just often it's used for computer games for sort of efficiency. Like here you have a house and you've got what looks like maybe a floorboard, you've got a brick texture for the front of the house, tiles for the roof, you've got a few different things and you can put them in one image file, or you can actually have two textures on the same object. Having two textures is less efficient, or you can just jump into Photoshop and add that to the book texture. Maybe I'll show you both, why not? I'm going to save that book texture here. Which one matches? This one's kind of fun. This is kind of simple. I'm just going to, it's got a little watermark on it, but I don't think we'll see it. I'm just going to save that image, put it in my textures folder and call it book pages. Okay, and then I'm going to go and grab that texture and, oh, okay, that didn't save as a JPEG. Hold on, let me just save image as. Why did that not save as JPEG? Let's just check. No, okay, I don't think we want WebP, unless my Photoshop can open it. Nope, okay. Let me just grab, I don't know. Can we grab this as an image? Save image as, I'll call it book pages _2. That's come as a JPEG, that's better. So so I'll delete this one that didn't work, don't need that. And I will Photoshop it into, that's the other one that didn't work, into this. So if I open that in, I use GIMP instead of Photoshop. Very, very similar idea. You can just do your basic like image editing. If you don't know how to do this, you could probably just ask a friend, or you could make, I'll show you both ways. I'll show you how to do it with a second texture. I'm just going to drag this book pages in here, see what comes in. It's come in way too big. I'm just going to go Shift T, and woof, it's a nice big texture. Okay, we don't really need that. I'll just make it smaller, and I'll just have to move it back onto my canvas, and I'll rotate it, layer, transform, rotate, and I'll just transform it down a little bit more. And I'm just going to use some of the spare part of my texture here that I'm not really using. And what I can also do is I can duplicate that texture and just move it down. And as long as it's seamless, hopefully I can just do that. No, it's not seamless. Okay, that doesn't look good. We've got that funny line there. Okay, maybe I can even use, let me think about this. Okay, so I probably should have spent a little bit more time getting a better texture, but what I can do, I'm just going to duplicate this layer and I'm going to transform it, and I'm actually going to scale it negatively, so I'm going to make a mirror image of it just manually. So that should, now if I move one of them up, we should have a seamless texture. Okay, that's better. Okay, now it's seamless, and I'm just gonna, yeah, I did not mean to do that. So I've just completely rotated my view, which I did not mean to do. Just put that back to 0. Okay. I'm just going to merge these layers down, merge down, duplicate it again, and move it. I'm just basically making a little bit more book page to use in my texture. But you could probably also find a texture that has pages in it. But this is, it's cool, to make your own textures. If I go in like book texture map, you'll probably see some that have pages, like like this looks like it has pages. These look like the, yeah, they're the pages. It's a really old book. That one has pages. So yeah, you know, that one has pages. But they're all these old books. I found it hard to find a new book. So I guess that's why we're going to have to do this. Okay, so I'm just going to overwrite that. So there's my texture now. Hold on. Export. Pop back to Blender. Sorry about that, folks. But now we're back. And I might just have to go back into my shader and reload this texture. So now if I go back into my UV editing, there's the pages. Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that distraction. Just going to go and I'm going to find, okay, the islands that have the book pages. This looks like one. So I'm just going to pop it where the pages are and just see how it looks. Looks okay, but we've got some other ones that are in the wrong place. So we'll keep going. Let's see what that island is. Okay, it's also pages, so I'll just pop it over the pages. I'll also point out, you know, I'm doing a very simplified version of texture mapping in this tutorial, and it's really just because of the nature of this course. I want you to be sort of aware of what a lot of these processes are, SY. But in class, Royce will sort of talk to you about how they're all a little bit more complex than that. You know, when we're texturing something more complicated like a human face, for example, which would look like, hold on, human face texture map, you'll see that they look super strange, and that's because, you know, unwrapping and flattening the texture for something that's not like a book, you know, a lot of flat surfaces, it's much more complicated. But we're staying with something simple. Okay, just to finish up, I need to get some of these areas also on the green. So I'm guessing that's some of these. If I G for grab, move that around, or maybe that might even be, yep, it's under there. I'm just going to scale that down a bit and pop it on some of that green leather there. And this one is probably the inside here. G for grab, scale it down. Okay, it's got it on the leather. This one, yep, the same. I'm really placing these pretty approximately just because, you know, we're not going to have this object be in a really large amount of detail in our scene. And as I said before, I just want you to understand the concept of UV mapping. This is not, you know, a really specialized tutorial. And what are these little things? I think they're in here. Yes, okay, so that's leather as well. So that should be about it. Okay, so there's our book. Not too bad. It looks kind of like a book. Now, I'm just going to go into my original layout, toggle back into my material preview, and there's our book. It's looking pretty booky. I like it. Oh, that's something funny. Okay, I've made the cover upside down. Look at that. It's like a Chinese book, actually. It looks like you would open it this way, like a traditional Chinese book. If I look at it this way, it looks like the cover's upside down. So I'm just going to flip that around. What's the easiest way to do that? So if I go into my island select this island, I could even go SY -1, enter. Yeah, that's just flipped it. Now, it doesn't have any writing, so, you know, I don't have to worry about anything being backwards or anything like that. It's just so that it kind of looks like it should. Okay, so what you can do with your book is you can, again, I really recommend having a look at what's in your house. Like starting from something real, you're going to end up in a much more interesting creative place. So, you know, even though I took a really simple photo here, this photo, there's so many little things in it. The more you look, like, you know, hand sanitizer, you know, we can tell that, you know, COVID was not that long ago. Pens, hair ties, there's so much, and it's so much more fun working from something real, and you'll end up with a much more fun scene. So I really recommend having a look at what's at home, and, you know, you could even take, you know, maybe one of your parents' favorite books or one of your favorite books, you know, make it real, make it meaningful to you. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do with my scale applied, I'm just going to pop on a bevel modifier and see if we can get a quick and easy solution to all of these really sharp edges that don't look good. They don't look realistic. You know, we beveled the edges of the pages here, but I'd like to sort of have an all over bevel of some of these hard edges. So I'm going to go into the modifier menu with this little wrench here, add modifier and bevel. And what it should do, I don't know how cleanly it's going to do it. It should just give us a little bevel there. I'm going to add another segment. Hopefully it doesn't mess up our UVs too much. And I might even right click, shade smooth, see if that looks good. It's okay, it's not great. All right, we might come back to that in our render, but I think for now, that looks pretty good. If I tab out of this, if I hide this, put it back on shade flat. If I turn this on and off, I think with the bevel it looks okay. We'll just have to see how it looks when we light it and stuff like that. Okay, but there's your book, and that will be the end of this first tutorial, and in the second tutorial we'll start to set up the environment. Okay, bye-bye.